I'm Mbweha. You can call me Ben. I'm Team Relentless, and this is the Playbook, where you can come to learn to do something a little bit better in Star Wars Legion than maybe you did before. I hope. Today we're talking about Tauntauns.
Let me see that tongue.
Wait, no, that isn't what I said. I did not say that. We're talking about Tauntauns. Talking about Tauntauns. Just roll a thing. Roll a thing. You swear it isn't going to happen again? You promise? Okay. In case you've been living under a rock and haven't heard, Tauntauns are extremely good. Like, how did the Empire ever even take Echo Base good? Also, they just got nerfed, so we're going to need to talk about that too. Dear Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless. I heard you were going to do a video on Tauntauns, and I just wanted to let you know how unbalanced and game-breaking they are. Look, Jar Jar 420, this isn't a series about complaining that things are broken. It's a series about getting better at playing Star Wars Legion. So I would appreciate it if you would kindly stop writing me letters. Moving on. Number 1, understanding the nerfs. All creature troopers took 2 minor hits in the February 2020 RRG update. They are, creature troopers may no longer clamber, and creature troopers must now use all available actions when withdrawing from an engagement using the 1-speed tool. So the first one, can't clamber. This is mostly not a big deal because it was rarely happening anyway. The 2 things to consider with this particular change is watching out for Vader's Might, which can now hilariously strand your Tauntauns on top of a building, and being aware that your opponent now has many more places where they can hide from your charging snow lizards. And the second one, basically you get one big charge now instead of being able to ram turn after turn after turn. But honestly, that's how you should have been playing anyway, which we're going to talk about right now. Number 2, knowing when to charge. This is probably the most simple and infuriatingly difficult parts of playing Tauntauns. Don't just charge in. Why not? Because if your opponent knows what they're doing, they're gonna kill your Tauntauns after they charge in, although it'll take them a couple turns to do so. So since it takes a couple turns to punch Tauntauns to death, you should do it at the end of the game. It would be nice to say that that means you should charge in on turn 5 or 6, but in lots of tournaments, games are going only 5 or even as few as 4 rounds. So you have to be aware of the clock and charge in on either the last or next to last turn. The only time you don't obey this rule is when the objective would dictate otherwise. For example, if you're playing Recover the Supplies and going for an early center box grab, then blow the Lizard Cavalry trumpet and charge in horns first to cover whoever's grabbing the center box. Another common example would be simply never charging, because you'd rather have the Tauntaun scoring on a key position or breaking through into an enemy deployment zone. Number 3, the importance of the pew! Regardless of when or even if you ever charge in, Tauntauns play an important role in harassing and whittling away at your opponent throughout the course of the game. Their ranged attack pool of 4 red surge to hit sharpshooter 1 is no joke, and it's pretty normal for them to make an opponent make 3 saves every time they shoot. The challenge here, however, is not getting them shot up or suppressed into oblivion in the process of doing this. The answer? Meerkatting. Tauntauns are kind of big, so this isn't exactly easy, but in general, you want to keep them out of line of sight, move out and shoot using Relentless, and then GTFO right back out of line of sight again. Specifically, the order of operations here is Action 1, move, reposition, shoot. Action 2, reposition, move, wallow in your opponent's frustration. Remember that wallowing in your opponent's frustration is a free action, but just like any action other than move, you may only do it once per activation. You also can always do this in such a way where you end up in the exact same location where you started, but facing in the opposite direction. So you only technically need one piece of line of sight blocking terrain to pull this off. However, you do need to be conscious of what sort of position you put yourself in for the next turn, of course. Also, since the pistols can shoot in any direction, you can move up and just barely catch range 2, and then move completely out of range 3 of the same enemy. A Tauntaun going in a straight line at speed 3 will move 8.5 inches, so there's even plenty of wiggle room to not go in a perfectly straight line when doing this. Using this strategy may cause your opponent to move themselves out of position as they try to chase down a range 3 shot at you. And if you're shooting at an enemy that's a little bit further out from the rest of your opponent's army, it's possible that that's the only unit that will be able to move and shoot at you at all. Now, if you combine these peek and shoot shenanigans with going last first, then, whew, talk about a deep pool of frustration to wallow in.
Thank the maker. This oil bath is going to feel so good.
Number 4, going last first. Going last first in Legion is the practice of having a unit go at the very end of one turn and then very first the next turn, effectively going 2 turns in a row. This is an essential strategy for any MVP unit in any list, especially if it's in a dangerous position. In the case of Tauntauns, it's extremely important you keep them out of danger, especially in the early game. As mentioned before, you get one big charge to wreck your opponent's day with, and it's usually best to save it for the end of the game to disrupt your enemy's victory points. To pull off a last verse with Tauntauns, you need to have a way to get orders to all of your snow lizards 2 turns in a row. This is why, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, Tauntauns nearly always have HQ uplinks on them. Activation control is essential for going last first, and you need to have a plan for how to do it. Number 5, list considerations. I've linked in the description below 2 of the most highly competitive meta Tauntaun lists. But if you're wanting to build your own, maybe with just 2 Tauntaun units instead of 3 or something insane like that, there are a few considerations that you need to make. You need activation control so that the Tauntauns are activating when you want them to. This usually means uplinks on all but one of them, with a jammer on the last one to disrupt droids or anything else that uses coordinate. You need a lot of activations so that after the Taunts activate, your opponent has fewer opportunities to affect them. I think 11 is the absolute minimum you should have if Taunts are the centerpiece of your army. You need Leia. There's no reason not to be taking her. No Time for Sorrows give your Tauntauns an extra dodge and a free movement at a key time in the battle. If you time this just right with your comms jammer Tauntaun and your opponent doesn't see it coming, you can really wreck their day. You need a heavy bid. This is because recover the supplies in key positions are such strong objectives for you, as are the conditions limited visibility and rapid reinforcements. If you bid high enough to get a blue player, you can guarantee that at least one of those objectives and one of those conditions will be present when you're defining the battlefield. If you start messing with different list compositions, given what I've just said, you'll begin to see how people eventually arrived at the lists that are listed in the description. Bonus! Remember that the typical target priority for pew-pewing with Tauns is the same as anything else in Legion. Shoot at things that aren't going to have cover. Remember that the safest thing to charge into is enemy trooper units. This is because the melee will count as an engagement, and your Tauntauns won't get shot up by the rest of their army until that unit has withdrawn. This is even better if the enemy trooper unit has already activated, as it won't be able to withdraw until the following turn. Remember that Legion is won based on the objective that you're playing, so using your Taunts to secure your own objectives or disrupt enemy ones is always priority numero uno. Summary. Let's review. Number 1. Creature troopers took a little nerf, and you should be aware of that. Number 2. Expect to make one big charge, and almost always do it at the end of the game. Number 3. Use your pistols and mobility to meerkat your enemy. Number 4. Use activation control to go last first with your Taunts at key moments in the game, like when you make a charge or know that you're going to leave your lizards in a dangerous position. And number 5, Taun lists should have activation control, lots of activations, Leia, and a heavy bid. Now you know how to play Tauntauns better than you did before, I hope. If you liked the video, please prove it and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this has been the Playbook, Tauntauns. Everything she does is magic. Everything she does just turns me on. Look what you've done.